What we're doing today is an excavator bucket repair. Alright, now this bucket has a crack in it, which it looks to me like it was used in some kind of prying operation, and it ended up cracking, and it had a repair on it, and it ended up failing. The repair did as well. So when you're repairing something like an excavator bucket, you really got to know what you're doing in order to prevent it from cracking again. Alright, now this bucket is like just under 3,000 pounds, so it's a pretty big excavator bucket. And if it's a big excavator bucket, it's going to be picking up big loads. So if you have a repair that needs to be done, you want it done right. So what we're going to do here is kind of spell out how we're going to go about this. And I actually already did it and finished the repair, and now I'm doing the introduction, so I know exactly what I did. So we're just going to kind of go over some things that are done for any kind of crack repairs. The first thing is drill, right? So basically the process starts out with, if you have a crack like this, and that's kind of what it is, it's on the corner of the bucket towards the front of the teeth, and if the crack comes off of the part, that's good, but if it goes to the inside of the part and stops in the middle of the part, you have to drill out the end of it. That's always step number one in any kind of crack, unless it goes to the edge. If it's in the middle of the part, you've got to drill it out. I put a die pen on here, so I put a die penetrator test on here to make sure that I knew where the end of the crack is, because the eye says it ends right here where this blue marker is, but it probably goes past that a little bit. So you want to actually drill it out past it and maybe just touch where it looks like you can see it with your eye, all right? And the reason you're going to do that is because the stress from this crack, if you just weld it, it's going to keep cracking. You have to drill it out so that if the stress comes into the drill spot, it's going to go in a circular motion back into the crack again, all right? So you always want to drill out the end of the crack. That's the first thing that we did out there. Next thing you're going to do is grind, all right? Now this is a side view of this. So picture this part turned, facing you, so we're looking right here, and that's the crack going through the part, right? So what you have to do anytime you have a crack is grind more than 50% of the way through. So this hidden line going down here, we're going to grind that far down, okay, right there. We're going to fill that in with weld, then we're going to flip it over, grind that far in again. On the opposite side, fill it in with weld. So you're getting weld 100% through the actual crack. Actually more than 100% because you're grinding out the weld too. Because if you get down to here, you're grinding that much of the weld out, right? So you got to grind completely through the entire crack. If you can't flip it, you got to grind almost all the way through the crack. So you would grind way up to here and then get full penetration through. Luckily with this, we can get to both sides. It is a pain to flip because it is 3,000 pounds, but I got a 5,000 pound fork truck. So we're going to take it out, flip it, and do both sides, all right? So drill, grind, weld, repeat if there's more than one crack. I did go through the whole bucket and found a bunch of cracks. We're just going to do the main big crack that's on this for this video, but it's going to show you exactly how to properly fix a crack on an excavator bucket. It doesn't necessarily have to be an excavator bucket. Any crack that you are trying to fix, this video will show you how to properly fix it. So I would say we're going to get out there and get into this. I've already done it, but we'll get into the video now. So here's the video on the excavator bucket repair. So what we're going to do today is repair a crack on this excavator bucket. It's cracked pretty bad down there, and it's cracked up here as well. So what we're going to do is throw a die pad on the crack just to find the end of it before we drill it out. Basically go into a step-by-step procedure on how we're going to fix this thing. So let's get right into it. So we're going to start by looking at the first crack here. I don't know if we can see that. Kind of off on it. There we go. Alright, so we got a crack right here to this top corner, and behind this is basically solid all the way through. So what we're going to have to do with that is basically grind all the way through that crack, weld it from one side, and then, yeah, if we get to the back, we'll put one on the back too, but we're going to be only able to get to the back on that very bottom. So basically grind all the way through that crack and fill it back in. That's a minor one compared to the other one. So let's take a look at the other crack. The second crack on this thing is over here towards the front, and you can see the cause of this crack is from prying, and that bolt, that hole that bolt goes through is basically causing that crack, right? It's a weak point in that bucket. And you can see the crack goes right down through, all the way down to the bottom, and then it starts going across the front of it as well. And I just put a dye pen on there. That's what that red stuff is on the bottom right. And we'll look at the dye pen so I can kind of tell you how we're going to attack this thing. Alright, so we got the crack going down in the front. What we did is we hit it with a dye pen real quick, just to kind of make sure we knew where the crack was going to end. Right, so you can see it's bleeding pretty good right down through the front of that. So at the end of that crack, we're going to drill that out. I'm going to put a mag drill in there, drill it out. Basically a stop crack. Anytime you have a crack, you got to put it in a circular motion back into itself. So that's why you would drill a hole at the end of the crack. So we're going to start by drilling that hole. Then we're going to take that tooth off where that bolt was going through. So we're going to hit that with the heat wrench, get the tooth off, and then we'll start grinding this thing out after we drill it and get the tooth off. Alright, so we just put the mag drill in here, drilled it out. You can see there's a hole right there. We had to grind back the weld a little bit because the drill was wandering. What we're going to do now is take the tooth off, I guess. And I made a discovery with that is not good, so let's take a look at that. So I was planning on heating these up, turning them out with an impact, and we discovered that the nuts have been welded on. Right there. So I'm just going to torch them right off. There's not much I can do about that. So enter torch, and let's take this side tooth off and we'll start trenching in after that. We just torched off all them bolts. I'm going to pull that tooth off now, and then we're going to start grinding down in the flat part that's just above the floor. We're going to trench that. It's surprisingly thin. I would say 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch. So we're only going to have to trench this thing probably a little bit over 1/4 of an inch, and then weld in the flat part. And then I'm going to flip this thing around. I might go vertical up yet. I don't know. I got to look at it, see what kind of shape we're in here. You can see, if you look real closely, right down there, that's got kind of a mess going on, and that looks like it was repaired before, and that's such a mess that I think I want to get it flat so I can get it good and hot, burn that baby in. So I might do some flipping here, but for right now, we're going to go inside of the bucket, trench that baby, then weld that part of it up. Here's a quick little before shot. So what I'm going to do is trench it just past that hole, kind of taper it down into the hole. We're going to dig out that crack right up to the wall, at least halfway through. So let's start grinding. Alright, so we gouged this out. I had to use the grinder, air carbon arc gouger. I used a plasma. We trenched this baby to where I started breaking through on the bottom. We're going to go uphill till about there. And then we're going to stop. So what we're going to do now is get some 1/8 inch 7018. We're going to crank it up, fill the bottom in, and go from there. Alright, so we just got done filling the inside. We trenched her almost all the way through. This bottom part I did all with 7018 all the way out, and then that turned out to be hollow. I didn't think that would be hollow, and I blew a hole in it with a 718 and ran and grabbed the MIG gun real quick, filled it in, and we did the up with that. So now we got to trench the rest of the crack up here that I didn't fill in yet. I'm going to probably flip it, I think, trench it, get the rest of the inside, then we'll get to the outside. That'll be a lot easier. The inside, there was just nowhere for the material to go as we were blowing it out, but we got it done. We had to do a lot of odd things, and I destroyed some consumables on a plasma, but we got her trenched out. So on to the rest of the inside. Alright, so I flipped the bucket on its side. I'm clearly outside, as you can hear traffic going by, but what I did was there was another crack. I drilled a hole in that. That's this one right here. I drilled a stop hole in that, ground about halfway through. Then on the big crack over here, I'm definitely more than halfway through, up to the welds we already did. What I'm going to do now is fill that in with 7018. Then I'll flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. So let's get after it. Alright, before I get to welding this, we got these two cracks trenched. What I'm going to do is put the video camera on and try and show you the progression. We'll see how that goes. But the first thing I'm going to do is preheat this. I'm going to get the torches out, preheat it, then we're going to get to welding this thing. Alright, here's a look at the grooves we just filled in. What I'm going to do now is do a little bit of padding, like up in here, just surface it, 'cause it's actually still hot. I just ate lunch, it's still hot. Just kind of get some hard facing in there where I can. I looked at the other side, and there's room to put some welds down, so I'm going to do that real quick. I'm not going to film it, I'll show you the before and the after. So this is officially the before. And I haven't ground down anything yet, of course. I'm going to wait to do that till the end. But we're going to do a little padding here and there, and then I'll shoot it, and then we'll continue on to the back side. Okay, here's another look. We finished this side. It's 100% done. It was the hardest side. I'm glad it's done. Just because it keeps the smoke and the dust inside the bucket, you're kind of in it, right? And then I started surfacing this thing, and I couldn't stop. So that's what I came up with. I wish I could have got some more in here. I'm just afraid that that tooth isn't going to fit on right. I'd really like to run it up and down here, but there's just that's as much room as I can go. I'm going to flip it over, and I can surface down on here and continue on the other side for a little bit. Not about here, and then it gets into that tooth. So we're done with this side. Let's flip it over. Keep going. Alright, so I just got done building up that surface right there to make it nice and flat and even. So what we're going to do now is flip this baby over, trench the other side, and go from there. Alright, so we're on the back side now, and you can see we trenched that crack out. I got it in as good as I could. I mean, we're down at least 3/4 of an inch on that end there, probably like 1.5 inches. So we're going to hit this with some low-high, and then I'll probably do as much buttering as I can down here, but that tooth goes back on, so I can only do so much. And then we're going to go to the back side, or actually it's the bottom of the bucket, and then we'll be done with this big crack. So let's start welding her up. Alright, here's a quick look at the repair we just did. We filled it all in. On the edges, we went around it. On all edges. And you can see, somebody welded it before and it's kind of pitted. We're going to finish up a little bit of a surfacing on here, but I'm going to put the tooth back on, mark it with some soapstone, because I don't want to grind any more than I have to. So I'm going to put the tooth back on, mark it with some soapstone, and I'm going to butter what I can. So I threw the tooth up on here. I don't care about this area because I got to grind that flat anyway, so all that stuff I'll have to grind off. But right into here, all the way up to here, I'm going to butter all that. There's a big hole right here. We're going to butter all that, make it nice and homogeneous. And just do a surfacing weld with 7018, that way it gets a little more tensile strength there. We'll go across the crack here, that's why I put that line there. So we're going to butter it up. Let's go. Alright, so we buttered the bottom of this. Transitioned real nice here on the front. We just got to put the tooth back on after we go to the back side. We'll be wrapping this up. The back side is basically the bottom of the bucket. I'm going to trench that, fill it in, and we are done. So let's trench that and weld it up. Okay, this is the last part of this bucket we got to fix. And it's the bottom of it, and you can see I gouged that, then ground it. And we got some holes right there that are going to give us trouble, but I'm going to crank it to try and fill those babies in. Upon completion of this, we will be done with the bucket. So let's weld it up. This is the before, and let's check out the after. Alright, we just got done with the back side of this. That completes the big giant crack in the excavator bucket. We'll give it a flippity flop, give it some other views, and then we are going to get out of here. Alright, so we're going to take a look here at the main repair that we did, the final look at it here. We trenched that about 1.5 inches deep. Went more than halfway through all that, and it was kind of cobbled together, so we just surfaced the whole thing to make it all a nice homogeneous piece of steel. Let's take a look at the other side. Same thing over here, trenched it in there nice and deep, made sure we got it in as deep as we possibly could. Went all the way through the crack, and again it was kind of cobbled together, so we did another surfacing weld just to bring it all together. And we did the same thing on the back side. Now we're going to take a look at some other cracks that we found, and we filled those in too, so I just wanted to show you those real quick. We only filmed this one, but I'm going to show you the other ones just real quick. So one side was cracked. I looked at the other side, it was just starting to crack. So we did the same thing we did to the other side. We ground out all the way through. Actually, I used an oxy-fuel torch, blew a hole in it, filled it, did as much surfacing as we could, and fixed that. So one side was cracked, and lo and behold, the other side was cracked as well. Now we knew about this crack too. It was cracked right up there. So what we did is we ground in as much as we could, and basically reinforced it after we filled in the groove on the top of this here bucket. And then I thought, this side's cracked, let's take a look at the other side. So we looked at the other side, and lo and behold, that had a crack too. So what did we learn from this? Basically, if one side's cracked, there's a good potential that the other side's going to be cracked as well. So as we wrap up this bucket repair video, a couple things to remember. If you have a crack, you got to stop the crack with some kind of hole. Make that stress that goes around, back into itself. You want to grind through the first half of whatever you're welding. Get on the other side, grind through the other half to make sure that you got weld all the way through, and that'll stop it from cracking again. So that's all we got for today. Thanks for watching and subscribing to TD Weld. We're going to get this bucket down the road.